I never imagined that a simple Excel spreadsheet would become the weapon that destroyed my marriage and saved my future. But sometimes the quiet ones are the most dangerous. My name is Claire, and for 12 years I believed I was married to the man of my dreams. David was charming, successful, and treated me like a queen. At least, that's what I thought until I discovered the secret account that had been bleeding our marriage dry for years. It started on a Tuesday morning in October. I was organizing our home office when I knocked over David's coffee mug, spilling brown liquid across his desk. As I frantically grabbed papers to save them from the mess, one document caught my eye. It was a bank statement, but not from our joint account. The header read First National Private Banking, and the account holder was David Michael Harrison, my husband. My hands trembled as I read the numbers. The balance showed over $250,000. Money I had never seen, never known about, money that should have been part of our shared life together. I heard David's footsteps on the stairs. Quickly, I photographed the statement with my phone and cleaned up the spill, my heart pounding so hard I was sure he could hear it from the hallway. That night at dinner, I watched my husband cut his steak with surgical precision, the same way he had apparently been cutting me out of our financial future. He smiled at me across our dining room table, the one we had bought together 5 years ago when we moved into this house. How long had he been lying to me? How much money had he hidden? And why? The questions consumed me, but I kept my expression neutral. David was a corporate lawyer, trained to read people, to spot deception. If I was going to uncover the truth, I had to be smarter than him. Over the next 3 weeks, I became a detective in my own home. While David was at work, I searched through every drawer, every file, every hidden corner of our house. What I found made my stomach turn. There were multiple statements from the secret account, dating back 7 years. Regular deposits of $5,000 every month, money that I now realized had been skimmed from his bonuses, from our tax returns, from the inheritance his grandmother left us when she died 3 years ago. I had grieved with him when Grandma Harrison passed away. I held his hand at her funeral. I helped him sort through her belongings, never knowing that he had stolen half of what she left us, money that was supposed to secure our future together. But the secret account was just the beginning. Hidden in a folder marked insurance papers, I found investment statements. David had been playing the stock market with our money, making trades I never knew about, building a portfolio worth over $400,000. All while telling me we needed to be careful with money. All while suggesting I postpone my dream of opening an art studio because we couldn't afford it. All while insisting we drive used cars and take modest vacations because we were saving for retirement. I remembered our conversation last spring about my business idea. I had been so excited, showing him my plans, my budget projections. David had listened patiently, then gently explained why it wasn't feasible. We needed to be responsible, he said. We couldn't take risks with our financial security. What a fool I had been to trust him. The breaking point came when I discovered the real estate investments. David owned 2 rental properties in the next county, properties I had never heard of, generating income that never appeared in our joint accounts. The tenants' rent checks were deposited directly into his secret account, creating a steady stream of money that belonged to both of us but benefited only him. I sat in our bedroom that night, staring at the evidence spread across my laptop screen. 7 years of deception. 7 years of financial manipulation. 7 years of my husband stealing from our marriage while I lived on a fraction of what we actually earned. But David had made one crucial mistake. He had underestimated his wife. I began my own secret project the next day. If David could hide money, I could document everything. I created a detailed spreadsheet, meticulously tracking every hidden asset, every secret transaction, every lie he had told me about our finances. I photographed bank statements, copied investment records, and researched the rental properties. I tracked the deposits, calculated the returns, and built a timeline of his deception that would make any forensic accountant proud. For 2 months, I lived a double life. During the day, I was the loving wife, making David his morning coffee, asking about his cases, pretending our marriage was solid. At night, I was building my case against him, one spreadsheet cell at a time. The hardest part was pretending everything was normal. When David suggested we skip our anniversary dinner because money was tight, I had to bite my tongue to keep from screaming. When he worried about the electric bill while secretly earning rental income, I wanted to throw my evidence in his face. But I waited, planned. I prepared for war. The opportunity came sooner than I expected. In December, David received a promotion at his law firm. He was so excited, talking about the raise, the corner office, the bright future ahead of us. That night, he took me to our favorite restaurant to celebrate. As we clinked champagne glasses, David looked into my eyes and said something that still makes my blood boil. "Have some good news, honey. With this promotion, I think we might finally be able to afford that art studio you wanted." The audacity was breathtaking. He was offering to let me access what had always been our money, making it seem like a generous gift when it was simply returning what he had stolen from me. I smiled and thanked him, playing the grateful wife one last time. But inside, I was already planning his downfall. The next morning, I called the best divorce attorney in town. Margaret Chen had a reputation for being ruthless in financial disputes. Exactly what I needed. When I walked into her office 3 days later, I carried a folder containing 200 pages of evidence. Margaret listened to my story without interruption, occasionally raising an eyebrow as I detailed David's deception. When I finished, she leaned back in her chair and smiled. "Claire," she said, "in 30 years of practice, I have rarely seen a case so thoroughly documented. Your husband may be a lawyer, but he's about to learn that you don't mess with a woman who pays attention to details." I filed for divorce on January 15th, 3 days after David's birthday. I wanted the timing to sting. The look on David's face when the papers were served at his office was apparently priceless, according to the process server. Margaret had made sure to include a detailed list of assets in the filing, including every secret account, every hidden investment, every rental property David thought he had successfully concealed. That evening, David came home like a man walking to his execution. His usual confidence was gone, replaced by something I had never seen in him before. Genuine fear. "Claire," he began, sitting across from me at the kitchen table where we had shared thousands of meals. "We need to talk about this misunderstanding." Misunderstanding. I almost laughed at the word. There was no misunderstanding about 7 years of financial betrayal. "I know you're upset," he continued, "but you don't understand the whole situation. I was protecting us. I was securing our future. By lying to me every day for 7 years. By stealing money from our marriage. By making me feel guilty for wanting to start a business while you were secretly building a real estate empire." David's jaw tightened, and I saw a flash of the man I was divorcing. Cold, calculating, angry at being caught. "You went through my private papers," he said. "You violated my privacy. You can't use any of that in court." "That's where you're wrong," I replied, pulling out my phone to show him a photo. "This is the coffee stain on your bank statement, the one I discovered by accident when I was cleaning up your mess. Everything else I found was fair game once I started looking. And David, I found everything." The color drained from his face as he realized the scope of his exposure. The divorce proceedings took 8 months. 8 months of David trying every legal maneuver his expensive attorneys could devise. They challenged my evidence, questioned my methods, and tried to paint me as a vindictive wife trying to destroy her husband's career. But Margaret was better than all of them. She had dealt with financial deception cases before, and she knew exactly how to present my spreadsheet to the judge. The court date, I'll never forget, was September 23rd. David sat at his table with 2 high-powered attorneys, looking confident in his expensive suit. He had convinced himself that his legal training would save him, that he could charm the judge the way he had charmed everyone else. Judge Patricia Morrison was not interested in charm. She was a no-nonsense woman in her 60s who had seen every kind of deception imaginable. When Margaret began presenting my evidence, Judge Morrison leaned forward with obvious interest. "Your Honor," Margaret said, "the defendant engaged in systematic financial fraud against his spouse for 7 years. Mrs. Harrison will now walk the court through her documentation of these hidden assets. I approached the witness stand carrying a printed copy of my spreadsheet, the same document I had been perfecting for months. As I began explaining each hidden account, each secret investment, each rental property, I watched David's attorneys exchange worried glances. The rental properties alone, I testified, generated over $36,000 in annual income that my husband concealed from our marriage. He collected rent checks every month while telling me we couldn't afford basic expenses. Judge Morrison interrupted me. "Mrs. Harrison," she said, "how did you discover these properties?" I explained about the coffee spill, the accidental discovery of the first bank statement, and the investigation that followed. The judge nodded approvingly as I described my methodical approach to uncovering the truth. When David's lead attorney cross-examined me, he tried to make me seem vindictive and invasive. "Isn't it true, Mrs. Harrison, that you deliberately snooped through your husband's private documents?" I looked directly at David as I answered, "Your Honor, I discovered by accident that my husband was stealing from our marriage. Once I realized the scope of his deception, I documented everything to protect myself. I'm not the one who broke our marriage vows by lying about money for 7 years." The moment that sealed David's fate came when Judge Morrison asked to see my spreadsheet. Margaret handed her a bound copy, complete with tabs for different asset categories and highlighted sections showing the hidden income streams. Judge Morrison spent 20 minutes reviewing my work, occasionally asking clarification questions. Finally, she looked up at David and said the words that changed everything. "Mr. Harrison, this court finds your financial behavior during this marriage to be deceptive, manipulative, and contrary to the principles of marital partnership. Your wife's documentation is thorough and convincing." The final judgment was everything I had hoped for and more. Judge Morrison awarded me 60% of all marital assets, including the hidden accounts and rental properties. She also ordered David to pay my attorney fees and provide spousal support for 5 years. But the real victory was watching David's face as the judge read her decision. For the first time in our marriage, he had no control, no clever argument, no way to manipulate the situation in his favor. He was simply a man who had been caught stealing from his wife, and now he had to face the consequences. The day our divorce was finalized, I walked out of that courthouse feeling lighter than I had in years. David's secret money, the money he had stolen from our future together, would now fund the art studio I had always dreamed of opening. I never spoke to David again after the final hearing. His attempts to reach out through mutual friends were ignored. He had spent 7 years proving that I couldn't trust him, and I wasn't about to give him an 8th year to disappoint me. 6 months later, I opened Claire's Canvas studio in the downtown arts district. The space is beautiful, filled with natural light and the creative energy I had been denied for so long. My first exhibition featured a series of paintings about hidden truths and revealed deceptions, inspired by my own journey from naive wife to empowered woman. The irony isn't lost on me that David's deception funded my freedom. The money he thought he was hiding for his own benefit became the foundation for my new life, a life built on honesty, creativity, and independence. I heard through mutual friends that David struggled after our divorce. His reputation in legal circles was damaged by the public nature of our proceedings. Some clients questioned whether they could trust a lawyer who had spent years deceiving his own wife about money. He eventually left town, taking a position with a smaller firm in another state. I felt no satisfaction in his professional difficulties. I was too busy building my own success to waste energy on his failures. My art studio thrives now, hosting classes, exhibitions, and workshops for artists of all skill levels. The business that David once dismissed as financially impossible has become more profitable than either of us imagined. Sometimes the best revenge is simply living well. But the most important lesson from my marriage wasn't about money or revenge or legal victories. It was about the power of paying attention, of trusting my instincts, and of refusing to accept explanations that didn't make sense. David underestimated me because I was quiet, because I trusted him, because I didn't challenge his financial decisions. He thought my lack of suspicion meant I was naive or stupid. What he didn't realize was that quiet people often see everything. We just choose our moments to act. That Excel spreadsheet saved my life in more ways than one. It gave me back my financial security, but more importantly, it gave me back my self-respect. I learned that I was stronger, smarter, and more capable than I had ever imagined. Today, when people ask me about my divorce, I tell them the truth. My husband spent 7 years stealing from our marriage, but I spent 2 months building the case that set me free. The spreadsheet that documented his lies became the foundation of my new life. And you, if you discovered your partner had been hiding money from you for years, building secret wealth while restricting your dreams, what would you do? Would you confront them immediately, or would you take the time to build your own case? Would you trust the legal system to protect you, or would you find another way to reclaim what was stolen from your future?